on the 1st of August 2018, women and gender non-conforming people delivered a memorandum of demands to the government of South Africa at the Union buildings. The women of this country were aware that gender-based violence had reached levels that were simply unacceptable. It's evident to them that without a total integrated action by all relevant segments of South African society as well as political will, nothing would ever change to eliminate the scourge of gender-based violence. Well, joining me now to reflect on the events of that day is Lolo Saliso, one of the organizers of the Total Shutdown Movement. Lolo, thank you so much for your time and for joining us on today's program.
Good morning, Jacosa. Thank you so much for having me.
I wanted to talk about, to start off the conversation at least, reflecting on what triggered the Total Shutdown Movement. A lot of reports at the time focused on the police minister having just released the quarterly crime statistics, noting this, exponential jump, I think 117% jump in the murder rate for women. And there just being an uproar around how egregious that number was. But I think as South African women, the fatigue and the frustration had long been building. But just talk to us about that atmosphere and what really prompted this seminal moment.
Okay, so what really triggered us organizing Total Shutdown is that, for me, it started off on a social media platform where, on my Facebook, where I posted and tagged all the radical feminists that I knew in my circle and making a plea that we should actually stop complaining on social media and start taking onto the streets to call for the government to put an end to gender-based violence and femicide. The trigger really came from, it was during the period of Karabo, passing on, and other women who are just going missing and being found dead. And it became personal for me because I also had a friend who was found downtown in Johannesburg, burned in a bin. And it just really sent me off to just go on social media and make a plea with my fellow sisters and feminists and say, please, can we just radically organize each other and hit the streets of this country, shut it down for a full day. Nothing must move until the government does something about this. And so from there onwards, my comrades sounded the call, and we started off with the Facebook page, and we had more people, women and GNC folks, joining and asking to organize in their provinces. It was all just voluntary work. We didn't know exactly how we were going to do it, but we knew we wanted to do it, and we wanted to do it on the 1st of August to start off Women's Month because we had nothing to celebrate as women. And yes, as you said, Dokozo, there were reports that were coming through showing a huge increase and literally nothing being done about these cases. And so we organized ourselves in the different parts of the country. We had women in neighboring countries like Lesotho saying that, please, can we organize with you because we're also going through the same thing. And when we mobilized towards the 1st of August, we had the NGO sector, the CSO sector join us as well, where we mobilized resources for us to ensure that this march does happen and it happens very well and we make the impact. And with the demands that you're talking about, it was really a zero document that was sent into the Facebook group. And we asked the ordinary intersectional women and GNC folk of this country to say exactly what do they want to see change in this country when it comes to SGBVF. And so we had about a page with 300 or 400 a document with 400 pages of what women wanted to see change, and we had to downsize it to the 24 demands that we had to force the president to come and collect and receive from us at the Union buildings on the 1st of August. It was a very, very, very triggering moment. It was a lot of anxiety that came with it. For us as organizers, we didn't even feel the march, but until the next days when we started watching it. But it really, really was a huge turnaround time for the fight against GBV in this country.
Absolutely. I think for a lot of individuals in my line of work who are responsible for bringing some of these stories to the South African viewer audience, there was a lot of sort of comparative analysis that was made between the 2018 march that we witnessed on the 1st of August and the 1956 march that we often pay homage to as we celebrate Women's Month. And it's so interesting to me to note that in both instances, women felt as though there was nothing to celebrate. On the in the historical context, it was this understanding about how unjust past laws were. And, of course, in our contemporary understanding and context, it was just how unjust it felt to be a woman in this country with the government not taking our safety concerns seriously. But I want you to talk to me about what it felt like to be a woman, but also a woman in the role of as an agent of change, as someone doing something, as opposed to just sort of constantly lamenting the reality that we face, but actually being an agent for change.
It's, with regards to the total shutdown, I think when the call was made for us to mobilize, there was a vision that came with it. I mean, on the post, it was said, and we all just followed through with that we need to put down our demands. We need to say exactly what we want and when exactly do we want it. And I said that if they don't give us what we want, then we need to organize and shut down for 2 days to ensure that they actually understand how serious this issue is. And I think being an agent of change and as an activist for like the longest time that I've been, it's really been a tricky journey to see women, finding hope in total shutdown, that we're going to see change. It really also builds up your hope and your excitement that, finally something's going to happen. I mean, the first demand that the president agreed to at union buildings when he eventually decided to come, since we chose not to leave until he did come, was that he will organize the very first National Gender Summit on GBV, which took place on the 1st and 2nd of November in 2018. And that got us excited that we actually are being heard and so forth. So we were hopeful much. But, as time went by, we found that the demands, even to date, it's been 3 years now, and we really don't see, some of the demands have been met, but not all of them have been met, and the deadlines have long gone past. We find ourselves back in a situation where it feels like we are in a talk shop again with the president. It's another talk shop, and promises are being made for change to happen. But when we go into the communities, because we still work in the communities, we still work with victims and survivors, we still see no change. We still get reports just last week that in the past year, 41,000 plus women have been raped. And so being an agent of change gives you those moments where you feel like finally something's going to happen. But then again, we're dealing with this government that fails to implement things. And so we still again find ourselves feeling like we've actually let these women down, that we asked to take on the streets, and we're tired of marching. And so it's just continuous work, of ups and downs, of hope and disappointment. But really, the fire still burns, and we will not give up. There is another gender summit happening this year. Not sure exactly what's going to come from that, because all we want is implementation and results. And right now, we are not really seeing any. Some work is being done, yes, we'll not take that away. But we're not seeing any change happening in our communities, because that is exactly what we want to see. So it's ongoing work, ongoing hopes and dreams and visions, and a lot of disappointment. But the fight continues, and will be continuing.
Well, Lolo, thank you so much for joining us on our platform this morning. And indeed, the work does continue, and we hope to see some of those demands finally being implemented by the government. That was Lolo Saliso, one of the organizers of the Total Shutdown Movement, helping us to remember that seminal moment in South African history.